It's my pleasure to introduce my friend, Sam Leong, to this session. I've known Sam for 19 years, if you can believe it. At the time, Sam was a PhD student finishing up his dissertation at Stanford. And then he joined a startup and then Google. And I went to Shanghai, sent by eBay. So over the course of the next decade or so, we kept in touch. So I did not have the luck to invest in Sam's first startup, Aloha. So Sam created Aloha after a few years at Google. And with a few years of hard work, the Aloha was acquired by Alibaba. So, however, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to invest in Sam's second startup, which is Otter.ai. So over the course of last maybe 5 years, four plus years, I've interacted with Sam again, both as friends and also as an investor. So I think Sam's background, being an engineer, has been very relevant to some of the audience today. And I love to have Sam share his stories, how he created the first and second company, and what are the takeaways, what are the advice he would give to the audience. With that, I'll hand it over to Sam.
While you're listening, it's actually, if you look at the Zoom chat window, there is a URL there that actually shows the live transcript of this webinar. So let me just put the link there again if you join late. So while you're listening, you can see Otter in action. Share my screen. Presentation. Can people see my screen? Yeah, just a little bit background. Yeah, I myself came from China, went to Peking University, studied computer science, came to the US, did my PhD in computer distributed system at Stanford. After that, I worked in a few companies and joined Google in 2006 and led Google Map location service. Can people hear me well? Just want to make sure the audio is good. So yeah, as we mentioned, after 4 years at Google, I decided to leave and started my first startup, Aloha Mobile, with a couple of other friends. We built a mobile analytics system, actually tracks location and understand users' mobile behavior. Build a few consumer apps on top of that, and also licensed the API to other people. Later, it was acquired by Alibaba. And but 2 years later, I decided to leave and start Otter together with our co-founder Yun Fu, who is also a PhD in computer science. So there's a lot of interesting things we're doing. We got good investors on the right hand side, at least a few. One of them is David Sheraton, who is my PhD advisor at Stanford. He is actually the first investor who wrote $100,000 check to Larry Page and Sergey to start Google. And also Tim Draper, people probably familiar with him. He is the first investor in Coinbase, Robinhood, Tesla, and all the others. Horizons Venture is the lead investor in Zoom Series B. And also got a number of really good advisors who joined our advisory board, including the Siri co-founder Adam Chair. Otter is solving a meeting problem. People are having meetings every day. We used to meet most of the time in person in conference room, but these days, most meetings happen online. So meetings are complicated in the sense that it's number one, it takes a lot of time. If it's a 10 people meeting for an hour, you actually use 10 people hour. It's very expensive. And a lot of information is being exchanged. How do you make sure everyone get the information? Everyone interprets it the same way, and make sure people do remember to follow up on action items. So all those are hard to do. In addition, there's actually Zoom fatigue. These days people are having too many meetings. People get really stressed. There are all kinds of statistics. One research shows that there are 25 million meetings are happening every day. My guess is probably more than that. And also, their studies show that could be $37 billion are actually wasted due to unnecessary meetings, because you have repeat meetings with different group of people to make sure they're on the same page. And also for managers and directors and executives, more than 35% of their time, actually for these days, I think probably more than 70% of their time is spent in meetings.
I spend like 90% of my time at Google in meetings.
Yes. So the problem is that most of the voice data is actually lost. It's not even captured. So if you think about all these, millions of hours spent in meetings, where did the data go? It just a small percentage of that data is captured in human brain. People, can remember a small percentage of that information. And what we are trying to do is actually, number one, we capture the data, we digitize it, we make it really easy to share, and then analyze the data to extract insights. So we build Otter from the scratch, from the ground up. And we build the AI technologies that does speech recognition. If you're looking at Otter transcript right now, you can see that it's pretty accurate, although obviously I'm not native English speaker. With my accent, Otter is still doing really well. Based on our benchmark and Zoom actually tested our system against Google, against Microsoft, Amazon, and found that, to their surprise, our accuracy is actually higher than their accuracy. So that's why Zoom actually decided to use Otter as their exclusive transcription engine. So in Zoom, if you turn on transcript, you're going to see Otter in action in every single Zoom meeting. However, the Otter product provides a much bigger service than the transcript in Zoom. So we created the Otter product. We sell to all kinds of people, their consumers, their businesses, enterprises. There's just some comparison between our service and Microsoft, Google Meet, Amazon Transcribe. We provide much more accurate transcription. It handles all kinds of accents. It's actually, especially in Silicon Valley, there are people from everywhere, from Europe, from Asia, from even Africa, South American. So we can handle all those accents really well. We can also recognize people's voice by using speaker identification. Each speaker, we can actually separate them. There are other features we provide, like customer vocabulary, meeting highlights. So I won't go through everyone. This chart is actually generated by our Series B investor, Spectrum Equity. Before they invested in us, they actually look at our growth, compare it against a few other highly successful companies such as Calendly, Prezi, SurveyMonkey. The green curve is Otter. You can see that on the x-axis it shows the number of months, and the y-axis shows the number of subscribers. And see that Otter actually beat a number of highly successful companies when they were at the same stage. Otter has this hockey stick curve growing upward. Just we've done all kinds of awards. We got actually we got Apple's Editor's Choice Award, Google's Best App, Best Daily Helper App Award, all kinds of others being covered on Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Forbes. The one reason like so many news agencies are talking about Otter is that most of their, I don't know, the tons of their reporters are actually using Otter on a daily basis. So that's why they actually wrote a lot of articles about Otter. I guess that's just a unfair advantage we have. Yeah, I was giving a live demo on CNBC a while ago. And after that, we got query. Somebody was asking, "Hey, where can we buy the Otter's stock?" Because the CNBC usually only covers public companies, but it's quite unusual that they did an interview with a small startup. This is us. I won't go through all of this. Oh, this is at Zoomtopia, Zoom's conference. Actually, that's obviously before COVID, when Eric actually invited me to speak on center stage. Right after Eric's keynote speech, we talk about natural language processing and speech recognition. This is David Sheraton. As I mentioned, he was my PhD advisor. He wrote the first check to Google founders to start Google. And on the left-hand side is Eric. We have a good partnership with Zoom, so that there are hundreds of millions of Zoom meetings have been transcribed by Otter. On the right-hand side is Steve Draper. We have all kinds of customers. So our team, this is a picture actually of our half of our team in 2018 at Techcrunch Disrupt. Techcrunch Disrupt, as people know, it's a major conference for startups to launch their service. Actually, probably Uber launched their service in Techcrunch Disrupt. Dropbox launched their service there. Just show a demo. Actually, Techcrunch Disrupt, since 2018, they use Otter to transcribe all their speeches live. This is the last in-person Techcrunch Disrupt in 2019. So all the speeches are here available. People actually can join this Otter group to get access to all of this. So you can see there are a lot of interesting people here. But I just want to demo one feature. For example, if I want to search for a self-driving car here, then it instantly found a few speeches that mention self-driving car. The first one, if I click on it, it shows it jumped to the place where self-driving car was mentioned. And if I scroll back to the top, it shows the title of this speech. So this is the title is The Future of Flight with Sebastian, who is actually used to manage Google's Waymo project. And our NLP algorithm actually automatically identified summary keywords here. If you see here, there's a list of summary keywords like flying cars, kitty hawk. So if suppose this is the first time you saw the transcript, the summary keywords give you a high level view of the topics. I can click on flying cars. It instantly, show you all the places flying cars are mentioned. And I can jump to anywhere. And
companies that have emerged. The company that you're running is one of, as I mentioned earlier, one of many flying car companies that have emerged in the past few years. And I'm wondering what Kitty Hawk is optimizing for. What are you going to do to survive?
Well, it's a wide open market. It's way too early to call a winner.
Yeah, as you can see, you can play back and listen. You can listen at any speed. This is why actually, if you miss a meeting, you can use this and listen to it at double speed, so that it can save you at least 50% of your time. And also the speakers are automatically identified by our algorithm as well. I think this is just another picture. This was actually before COVID happened. This is the Christmas in 2019. We had this party in Palo Alto downtown, and we have pretty diverse workforce here. And you can see there is an outer cake on the table. So it's actually pretty cute, and it's also really tasty. I hate to eat it, but it tastes really well. I think I'll just stop here. Maybe Wei has some questions, and I have some slides.
Yeah, I remember that party. I was there. It was a great party right before the pandemic. Yeah, so Sam, maybe I'll lead with 3 or 4 questions, and then the audience can also get ready for your questions. By the time you're ready to ask questions, just please raise your hands. Yeah, Sam, so share with us the first venture, Aloha. How did you come up with the idea, and how did you get the courage to jump out of Google and then plunge in as a startup founder?
At first I wanted to become a professor. That's why actually, I was so persistent to go for a PhD. But after a few years at Stanford, I look around and I see, wow, all this great companies around me, and they are generating bigger impact than a professor in school. Although at Stanford, there are quite a few professors who are also startup founders, including my PhD advisor. And a lot of people know that he wrote the first chat to Google, but not many people know he actually created several successful startups himself. His first startup actually was acquired by Cisco for more than $200 million. And another one actually won IPO. So that, planted the seed in my mind and say, hey, someday I want to do a startup. But I do, after I finished my PhD, I felt like I would just wasn't ready to build a startup. So that's why I actually work in a few companies, including I intentionally went to a startup before I joined Google to try to understand how a startup operate. It's just a much smaller team so that I can have bigger visibility and see how things operate. And I'm trying to gather information. I talked to a lot of startup founders. After I joined Google, the project I was working on actually was almost a startup inside Google, because when we started the location service, it was a completely new project. I wrote the first design document, the architecture, and I wrote the first line of code to start the Google location server project. So although it's inside Google, it's sort of a startup inside a large company. So yeah, it's has always been my my intention to build a startup, because I feel like I have some unique ideas. There are certain things I pushed in Google actually didn't go through, and it's just another reason I made me feel even stronger to do something on my own.
Yeah, that's typically the case, right? One, you see some opportunities, and two, you get some frustrations working for a larger company. But I keep forgetting that you actually had some experience with a smaller company before Google. How long did you stay in that startup?
I stayed there. How long did I stay there? 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
Was that helpful for your first startup?
Yeah, I got to, I think one advantage of joining a startup is actually you got to talk to the founders, because the team is small. And you got to talk to the founders, you got to talk to the most important, engineers, the most important, even you talk to the salespeople, you talk to other business functions all the time. So you get to see the big picture. You get to see, how something was designed. How did people get a requirement from customers? You see the whole pipeline, rather than when you're in a large company, you're just a small cog in a big machine. Your manager tell you, hey, get this done. This is the input, this is the output. Okay, that's all you do for many years. You just actually don't get too much visibility into the overall product. So yeah, I found it really helpful when I was working in that startup. Actually, afterwards, a lot of my old colleagues there later became founders. There's several startups was born by my old colleagues in that startup.
Well, yeah, successful startups are always the fertile ground for future entrepreneurs. It's always the case. Silicon Valley, Beijing and Shenzhen. But would you be open to the same arrangement if one of the audience may join you guys and get some experience and wanting to do their own startup in a few years?
Yeah, absolutely. We are actually at a high growth stage right now. We just, for a long time, we were really small, less than 20 people. Last year, we more than doubled our team, but this year we'll double again. We're trying to look for all kinds of roles. We're trying to look for engineering directors, engineering managers, DevOps, senior engineers, backend, front-end, mobile engineers. So if people are interested, definitely check out our website at author.ai careers. And again, we have, I think we have the best AI people, it's very hard for external people to believe that such a small team can build such a high quality system. We have customers like IBM, Salesforce, Stanford is a customer, Berkeley is a customer. And a lot of people thought we should at least have a few hundred people, if not thousands. But right now we're still under 100. But this year we want to double that. So you get to meet the best people in Silicon Valley. I can literally say that because the quality shows that with such a small number of people, we build a product that's been widely used. And people are always asking me, hey, what if Google does this? What if Microsoft does it? What if Amazon does it? I says, fine. I know they will do this. That's not an if. I know they're doing it, but we're confident that we can still create something better. Well, that's also the excitement and the fun that you know that you are competing with the best companies in the world. So that put you in the on the cutting edge. Right? It's you are changing the world. You are. I told our team that we are actually winning Olympic gold medals. Because all this system works so well. Just one anecdote. We actually recently really hired a real Olympian. We hired a he works in our sales team. He actually competed in the Tokyo Olympic Games.
Just last year, huh?
He won. Yeah, he won. He was on the American rowing team. They almost got a medal. They got the fourth place. So I said, yeah, we did get a real Olympian in our team.
That's great. That's great. I have a few more questions, but I'll save them for later. But I'll only ask you one more. So Otter is your second startup. Compared to Aloha, what are the similarities and differences as a founder?
Definitely, we learned a lot from our first startup. That's our first startup. After I was doing only technical work before that time. Then for the first startup, I suddenly had to do a lot of other things, right? I have to, write the pitch deck. I have to pitch to VCs. I have to figure out the business plan, figure out who the customers are. So definitely a lot of lessons. When I first pitched Aloha Mobile, I quit Google. I went home. I had $0 salary for a whole year. I had no funding. I pitched a lot of VCs, and nobody listened to me. And I had to just keep working on my demo and the prototype. It might be destiny or something. When I eventually got connected with Tim Draper, I showed my demo to him, and that tracks my location automatically when I'm traveling with my phone. And he got really excited. He said, wow, this is so cool. I mean, this unlocks my entire life. This is exactly what I want. That was, that's a feature actually Google has now in Google Maps, but we did it successfully in 2010. I'm pretty sure we are the very first one who actually made it work on both Android phone and iPhone. So, well, definitely a lot of lessons to learn. When you build a startup, a lot of us started with technical background. Of course, you want to build something unique in terms of your technology, but in the meantime, you want to make sure there is a good use case. There is a good reason, people need to buy your service. So the first startup, we are mostly focusing on technology. We're not very strong on the business side. So we actually licensed our API to another company who actually built a really successful business, and they were acquired by Microsoft for a huge amount. Although their entire backend system actually use our API. So that taught me a big lesson that although we created the technology, but we didn't figure out the business model. But then for Otter, it's very different. We actually see a clear business model. It's the SaaS model. It's quite similar to Zoom, quite similar to Slack or Asana, because for enterprises, they have a huge number of meetings. They need to take meeting notes. The managers want to make sure the people in their team are on the same page. So there's a huge pain point there. So people are willing to spend money on this type of service because if Otter can save you 1 hour a week, that's 4 hours a month, right? People, in a company like a Google, Microsoft, how much is 1 hour worth? It's probably at least $100 an hour, probably higher. So that's actually a few $100s saved per month. We're only charging you $20, $30. So that's a good ROI to buy Otter. So of course, the people you work with is also critical. Who do you hire? Who do you look for? It's definitely a lot of lessons.
Is it easier for you to recruit second time around?
Second time is a little easier. Yeah, definitely. We have some track record and a little easier to raise funding as well. Of course, you always need to have something real. In the pitch deck, people can write anything on the pitch deck, right? But eventually, you just have to have something real that people can experience. So Otter, I think the strength of Otter is that it's so easy to get started. You just talk, then we show you the result, right? And it's easy in the sense it's straightforward, but it's also hard because whenever you make a mistake, people can see it right away. So that also gives us a huge challenge that we have to make it work. So that's why we actually so obsessed with the quality. We have to work super hard to fix the error and improve the accuracy. So when I went to Zoom's office, I demonstrated to Eric. And I asked Eric and said, hey, just talk to Otter. And Eric talked a few sentences. He said, wow, this is good. When I talk to Google Voice, they never understand me. So, right, you just have to have something that works, that can impress people.
Excellent. So, so the first person who raised the hand is Xu.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Sam, for a great presentation and Wei for hosting the meeting. So my question is related to the Otter is, do you think Otter is more like the tech-driven? That's like your goal is trying to have the best algorithm that can beat big tech companies like Google or Amazon, or more like a business model that make the technology more accessible to customers and easier to use?
We're building a product. So the product needs to have the value people can use. And behind it is powered by really strong technologies. So it's a combination. We, as an engineer, I myself value the importance of technology. And that's also why Google is successful, right? They have the best search, the best system, on top of that, they have a lot of other things. But in the meantime, we're building a highly usable product that's collaborative, that help people communicate, help people collaborate, that people can use it in their daily workflow. Actually, if you have the Otter business plan, your calendar can be automatically integrated with Otter. So that every day your Otter assistant for every meeting can join the Zoom meeting automatically. For this webinar, actually Otter joined even before I joined, and it's taking notes.
I see. I saw Otter
Sam's,
first.
Yeah, Sam's Otter.
I said, yeah, I said, Sam, no answer. That was not you.
Yeah. Right now it's passive. In the future, we actually do plan to make it even more intelligent. It can answer questions, right? So that's why this is so exciting. There's maybe I have 2 meetings scheduled at the same time. I cannot attend both, but I can just provide some answers. I know, like, oh, that manager will probably ask me this question. So I can teach Otter in the future. It's not in the product yet, but in the future, when the Otter assistant hear that question that addressed to Sam, then he can answer the question because I already prepared it. I provide the answer.
Yeah,
it'd
be an interesting idea to have the Otter announce, "Hello, I'm Sam's assistant, Otter assistant. I'm here to listen, take notes," and then people will understand.
Yeah, we're building a SaaS service, but
Good.
It's powered by strong technologies.
So Sam, to raise question, I have witnessed and kind of understand that on the business side, you guys also spend a lot of time and energy. And you were talking about Otter being a natural fit for a SaaS solution, but you also have a D2C component, right? You also worked a lot with the different organizations, large and small. Would you highlight a little bit on that?
Yeah, we're building a typical bottom-up SaaS service. If you look at a number of highly successful SaaS companies, including Slack, Dropbox, Zoom also has that factor into it because Zoom has a huge consumer user base.
Mm-hmm.
And all these people, they may start as an individual consumer, but many of them actually are using Otter in enterprises on their own. How mentioned that he used Otter when he was in Uber. We have another product manager who applied for our job, and I asked her, how did you learn about Otter? She actually worked in Microsoft. And she said that actually I'm using Otter for my meetings in Microsoft. And then she likes it so much, and she said, oh, let me just actually join Otter. We actually hired her. She's really good. So the consumers, actually, a lot of them are professional consumers. I have, there are people who send me emails and LinkedIn message and say, hey, I use it in Facebook, I use it in Salesforce, I use it, in Amazon. So these people are our advocates for buying a enterprise license in the future.
Great. That was the first question from Ray. So Huangdi, your turn to ask the second question.
Okay, thanks, Wei. So I have two questions regarding one for business side and the other for your tech or
First,
product.
introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm Dee, working in Waymo. Yeah, so the first question, if I understand it correctly, as you define your product as a SaaS, you will charge users by subscriptions, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can see our pricing model at otter.ai/pricing.
Oh, I see. Got it. Thank you. And about like another then question is, how could you like build your ecosystem to make sure the customer stickiness and loyalties to your product? If the market for this product is super huge, then those like big techs that has a lot of ecosystem around the office suites will join this competition. Then how could you build your like product to be like more customer loyalties there?
Yeah.
More dependable.
Yeah, we track all kinds of metrics. We use all kinds of tools, Amplitude and others, Google Analytics. We look at users' behavior, the life cycle, when they join, how many meetings they use Otter for, do they share the meeting notes with other colleagues, so the virality is important. Otter has an intrinsic virality because meetings is a social event, and the meeting notes is useful for everybody who attends the meeting. So even if one person use Otter, it's always good to have that note share with everyone. It could be 10 people, 20 people, 30 people on the call. And when they receive the share, they will need to sign up to access the note, because there's something assigned to them, there are action items, or there are a few numbers they didn't remember. They need to use the Otter note to get the number. So then it spreads from one user to multiple users, and then once they start using Otter, they say, "Wow, this is useful. Why don't I use it for my next meeting in the afternoon?" So then they start using Otter, and then spread Otter to other colleagues again. The second question is regarding competition. Yeah, that's a question VCs ask us all the time. As a startup founder, you just assume there will be competitions. It's just a fact. Because once you prove something works, other people will work on it. Other people will try to copy it. What the important thing is, you always want to stay one step, two steps ahead of everyone. And of course, even for the same feature, you want to provide the best user experience. I think Zoom is a good example. When Zoom started, Eric came from WebEx. WebEx was already big. Google has a Google Hangout, Microsoft, there's Skype. There are competitors. Well, what did Zoom do? Zoom just created a better product. It's just easier to use. It's a higher quality, It's they still have a competition, You see their stock fluctuates, but competition is not always bad. It's actually push you to move faster and innovate faster. And in the meantime, for large market, it can accommodate multiple players. It doesn't have to be just a one player.
Got
Right.
it. So
Yeah, there are
So
people
it is
who use Zoom, there are people who use Microsoft Teams, there are people who use Google Meet. Well, one advantage Otter has is actually we support all of them. Yeah, you can use any video conference tools and use Otter.
Right.
Listen.
yeah, it seems that you build a more strong and like better products with a lot of good user experience. That makes you like your product to be have a lot of benefit on the user acquisitions. That the cost will be much smaller than many other products, right?
Yeah, it also has the stickiness because once you have like 20 meetings in Otter, it's hard for you to switch because oftentimes you need to look for information in Otter. It's like once you start using Gmail, right? You already have 1,000 emails in there. And how do you switch? So the cost to switch is high.
Great,
Yeah.
great,
Yeah.
great. So great content and great questions. So I'll just ask the last question. I know it's been more than an hour. So I really appreciate Sam's generosity. So Sam, what's your advice, your parting advice for the Chinese Americans as future entrepreneurs?
I have some advice, but of course, I mean we're still learning ourselves. For Chinese Americans, I think if you want to do a startup here, you really need to understand the market here. The market here and the market in China is completely different. You just have to unlearn a lot of things you learn in China. And of course, you need to really get into the society. Otherwise, you don't understand the user. You don't understand the business part, because most of us came from engineering background. You do coding, you do algorithms. Those are all important. I still value that very highly. But you just have to expand your scope. You need to have the right social networks, expand beyond just the Chinese community. Because, right, you need to have talents from everywhere to work on products, work on design, work on sales, work on marketing. You're probably not going to get a native Chinese person to run marketing because they just don't have the cultural background. Mm-hmm. And when you talk business, when you talk about customers, right, you need to talk their language. You need to understand what they care about, what their cultural background. Sports actually a big thing in America. I myself turned out I'm a big sports fan myself, so that's pretty natural. I love watching Warriors and watching 49ers. I play tennis myself. I ran a marathon. So when you mingle with the local people, sports is a big topic. I'm just using that as an example. You need to have topics you can discuss with people that resonate with people. For us, we've got Adam Chair, the Siri co-founder who joined us as on our advisory board. I know him for a few years. I talked to him, even before he agreed to join our advisory board. So we have a lot of things to discuss, and it resonated with him, right? And also for our chief design officer, for example, this guy actually came from UK, and he was CEO of MetaLab. MetaLab is a very well-known design firm in Vancouver, Canada. They designed the early Slack UI, and this guy was the CEO of that big design firm. And a few years ago, I had actually 4 or 5 years ago, I had coffee with him, and at that moment, we're trying to use MetaLab to design Otter, and he was the CEO of that company. And we became their customer. They designed our early UI. And a few years later, when he came to me, he said, I love Otter so much. I like to join you guys. So he left his job as the CEO of that design firm and joined us as a chief design officer for Otter. I think you just need to get the skills to be able to have a good conversation with these people, and so that they're convinced of your vision, they're convinced of your future, and they enjoy working with you. I guess it's just a lot of soft skills to develop.
Yeah, indeed. This is a part of what this community is trying to do, get the people to know each other, to learn from each other, but also, soon, not just from our fellow Chinese Americans, but also beyond. So I really appreciate Sam's generosity, and I believe it's really time well spent for the rest of the audience. So why don't we turn on our camera and show our face and unmute, and everybody unmute, and so we can give Sam a round of applause. Well, thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Wei. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, use Otter for your meetings. And
Yes.
also, if you're interested, join us.
And use your SDK as well.
We will, we will become a $1 billion company this year.
Yes. I know it.
Yeah, you can achieve it. We're done, Sam. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it's on my checklist for this year. Sam's company becomes a unicorn. So I told my partners already. Okay, great. Well, thank you, and then I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody else, feel free to hang around. Everybody else, feel free to hang around if you want to chat a little bit more.
Oh.
Yeah, you can leave, Sam. You're welcome to leave anytime. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so Sharon had a question, but unfortunately we didn't have time for Sam. But how do you guys like the sharing Sam's story? 大家觉得怎么样？我现在把这个可以关掉 recording。